But if you want to live that kind of life, it will not happen on its own. You have to design it on purpose. And it takes thinking it through and thinking, okay, what do I really love? What would make me happy? How could I get to work in a better mood if I just made some of these changes? What can you do today that would make your life more enjoyable, more relaxed?
Without Fear of Her Future podcast is for women who are passionately pursuing financial freedom using multiple streams of income and real estate to accomplish their goals. We are here to empower you to be brave, dream big, and design a life that you love that inspires others to do the same. I'm your co-host, Andrea Engstrom, a real estate investor and business coach and co-founder of the Partnership for Realtors. And I'm here with my co-host, Tresa Todd, founder of the Women's Real Estate Investors Network and author of the best-selling book, Without Fear of Her Future. Over the past 2 years, Tresa has had nearly 200,000 join her masterclass where she teaches women how to become successful real estate investors. Hey, Tresa.
Hey, Andrea.
Hi.
Wow, today is going to be fun.
Yes.
You know, we're talking about one of the, something I'm very passionate about.
Yes.
I believe one of the greatest reasons to become an entrepreneur and a real estate investor is the opportunity for us to build a life that looks like what we want it to on our own terms.
I love it. I know this is a topic you're super passionate about, Tresa, and so am I. And we talk about it every day in our podcast. We say, helping you to design a life that you love. And I will tell you, this was one of the trainings from you that when I joined your mentorship in the Women's Real Estate Investors Network, I watched this training over and over again. I think I even watched it more than the Golden Formula training, which was brilliant. But for me, this is why I got into real estate investing in the first place. I was burnt out, had spent years overachieving and never feeling like it was enough. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I wanted this time to be different. And so share with us, Tresa, what does it mean to design a life that you love?
Well, here's the deal. Most people have no idea what kind of life they really want to live. I mean, the typical American, things just kind of roll out. Now, we may have said, oh, I want to be a doctor, so we went to med school, or we say we want, so we may have done some things like that. But after that, and then some of us even prior to that, we didn't make the choices to be where we are in life sometimes. I mean, obviously we did make the choices, but we didn't make them purposeful. We just kind of fell into the thing. We fell into this house because it was the one that came open at the time, or we fell into this job because it was offered to us. We didn't actually design it. And so one of the things that whenever I began to invest in real estate and I began to make money, I wanted to do things differently than I had ever done before. And so I started thinking about, what do I want this life to look like? Where do I want to live? I can live anywhere in the nation that I want to live. Now, I have no desire to leave Dallas, Texas, because this is where all my people are. Sure. And I love it. So I'm perfectly fine. Now I want I want to travel. I want a few Airbnbs wherever in the mountains and in the, on the beach, so that I can go wherever I want. But I really love living in Dallas, Texas. But so many of us are just living in a place that, Andrea, you just made a huge move so that you could design a life that you love for your family.
Yes.
But also it's about designing a life that every day, not just where you live, but, I start my day, my real life job part of my day at 11 o'clock every day. But I get up early in the morning, and I have my priorities, all the things that are a priority to me. I have time with God where I love to read my Bible. I pray, I journal, that time is vital for me to grow spiritually. Then I am off to the gym. I want to go get healthy. I want to be fit. That is a huge part of my life. And then mindset. I have to grow mentally. And so I'm listening to podcasts or I'm reading books. And so I'm growing mentally. I also I want a little time of leisure. I do not want to jump up in the morning and have to, my kids are all gone and that's nice. But I didn't want, even raising my kids, I wanted to get up, and I've been getting up early for 30 years. I didn't want to rush everybody, yelling at the kids to get in the car, da, 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 da. But if you want to live that kind of life, you have to design it on purpose. You have to think about it. You have to plan it, and you have to make it work, because it will not happen on its own. And most people don't actually take the time to go, okay, wait a minute, even in your present situation, and you don't have to wait until you have money.
Yeah.
You don't have, I mean, on some things you will, but some things you can begin to design a schedule and those kinds of things. And it takes thinking it through and thinking, okay, what do I really love? What would make me happy? How could I get to work in a better mood if I just made some of these changes?
I love it. So designing a life that you love is not a marketing strategy or an investing principle. So why is this a topic that you focus on in a real estate investor training?
I feel like the specialized knowledge that I'm giving women is going to help them find the financial freedom. Mm-hmm. But I want them to also find joy and find peace in that financial freedom. I'm all about us making impact. And just because we make money, we can still be living in a city that we don't like, doing things, and still not designing a life we love. Yeah. And we're getting into a rut, or we're saying yes to things that we should say no to, saying no to some things that we should say yes to, because we're not thinking. But once you begin to design a life, design a schedule, start thinking about what you want your future, and I mean even your now and your future, because it's a little bit about both. There's some things that we have to work towards. There's some things that we can switch today. Tomorrow morning, we could do them differently. That would begin to design the life that we love. So I wanted to incorporate that into my teaching, because right from the get-go, I wanted women to begin to design a life that they love. And I also believe that as they begin to, I'm all about schedule. And I think that those two things go together, time blocking and scheduling. That's how you design a life, a daily life that you love. And I believe that we needed to do this to be successful. To really learn how to time block, to really think about your schedule, and not just, we so many times, and I've been so guilty of this, we just run full fledged.
Yes.
We're just all out, and we're not even thinking about, did I even like this day? Do I even want this to be a part of my life? Why am I doing this thing? And so when we stop and think about it and then begin to design it.
Yes. I think that when you just find yourself striving and grinding and pushing that without really giving thought to designing a life that you love, that there's almost never enough money. Like, it doesn't matter how much money you make, because you're still chasing something that it just feels outside your grasp. When you go after it without that intention of, is this the life that I want to create for myself? And I think so many of us get caught in that, and we think, we feel like we have to live up to other people's expectations, or we have to buy things to make ourselves feel better. And we call it self-care, when we're really not designing a daily life that allows for self-care. And so we try to overcompensate and take bigger and fancier vacations and buy more things and overindulge in different ways. And there's not enough money to fill a hole that an intentional life design will create.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that fulfillment. Well, when did you realize that this was a vital part of your message?
So a little bit was prior, even before real estate. I was all about designing the woman that I wanted to be. So that was a part of like what I was preaching and teaching, is who did I want to be as a woman?
Yes.
And I had no idea that I could also design a life, because I was stuck in that mindset that I had listen, I got into the medical field because I was desperate. I had 3 kids. I had quit high school. And I literally went to my local college and I said, hey, I need to do the quickest thing that I can. I need to get in here. I need to get an education so that I can go out and make some money and get out as fast as I possibly can. And this lady said, well, we have a program. It's a 2-year program. You can become a certified, actually surgical assistant. Mm-hmm. And it's a 2-year program, but you can double up and do it in 11 months. I said, okay, I'll do it. I didn't even know what it was, Andrea. I had no idea what it was. And I did it. Okay, that's not designing a life you love. That's just being a desperate woman going out there. Hey, it paid off. I mean, I ended up in a career that I absolutely loved for 25 years. It's how I raised my kids. And then I didn't think that there was ever anything more for me. That's the one thing that I knew how to do to earn money. Wasn't a lot of money, but it was paying the bills. Mm-hmm. But the one thing that I did know is I wanted to be a woman of character, of honor. I wanted to raise some good kids. And I felt my mother had been my hero, and I wanted to be like her. Yeah. And so I started really young, beginning to see what my weaknesses were, beginning to look at myself and say, oh, what do you need? I was a hot mess. That's another story for another podcast. But I was just a hot mess from my childhood. And so I had a lot of things to overcome. Mm-hmm. And so I began to design and look at other women in my life what character did they have? What were they like that I wanted to be? And then that began to be something that I was always sharing as I was teaching way before real estate. So then when real estate come on, I was like, okay. And I realized that now I could live differently, because I surely couldn't have started my day at 11 o'clock with my current, I had to be there, 8 o'clock in the morning. Uh-huh. So I couldn't do that. But once I found a little bit of financial freedom, I was like, okay, now I'm going to not only design the woman that I want to be, but let's design a life that you love. And so I put those two things together. And a lot of it also, Andrea, is I wanted the Women's Real Estate Investors Network to be something very different. Yeah. And I wanted women with character to be in my network. Mm-hmm. And so from day one, I start teaching this stuff so that they begin, because we come, we all show up in life with stuff from our past. We can be whiners, we could be negative, we can be complainers, victims. And I knew that women would be bringing all of these things. Mm-hmm. And I wanted them to start looking at themselves and saying, wait a minute, I don't have to be this way. I can be a woman of character and honor. And so they start thinking about that from day one after, when they come into, actually it's day 7 if you're coming through the Masterclass. Yeah. And I believe that is why the Women's Real Estate Investors Network is the kind of network it is because women, it's not just about money. It is also about us being women of character and honor and grace. And so
I love it. One of the big questions I ask in our coaching calls and that I challenge the women in our network around is this idea of be, do, have, right? It's who do I need to be in order to do what it takes to have what I want to have? And you were living that even before you started the network. And, I think, in a previous episode when we were talking to Noelle Nielsen, she was talking about how your vibe attracts your tribe. And I always brag on you, Tresa, in the sense that you attract other women of like character. But I think there's something else to that where you teach women to become the women of character that they are meant to be, and they step into that new identity and they join a network of other women stepping into that identity who have made that commitment to each other. And it is such a powerful thing, because even if they used to be a whiner, when they show up to the network, they're not a whiner no more, because nobody got time for whiners in the network. And so they level up with all these other women that you're calling to level up together. And I think it's just so cool. So do you think this is something that all people struggle with, this idea of designing a life that you love or living life on purpose? Or is it particularly challenging for women to develop this mindset or priority?
I think everybody struggles with it, but I definitely think women have, oh my gosh, because especially if we're mamas, we just are kind of thrown into this whole mama thing, and that can take up. I mean, that's what, that takes up 99% of your time because you never quit being a mom. And so I definitely, and I think a lot of us as moms, we feel guilty. There's a lot of, a lot of mom guilt. There's a lot of, am I worthy? Am I worthy of self-care? I can remember, I've always been such a girly girl. And even raising kids on a budget, I mean, I was a girl. I didn't go in public without my nails did. That was who I was. But girl, I couldn't afford to go to the salon. I was doing my nails myself. So yes, we struggle. And I would have felt guilty spending money at a nail salon at that time. So I think there's a lot of guilt of spending money on ourselves, taking care of ourselves. We're always putting everything for everybody else first. But if we will begin to take care of ourselves, then we can pour in to our kids, our family, everybody else. So yeah, I definitely think women struggle with this the most.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I've heard it called the mental load that a lot of women carry for their households, because it's not just about making sure that the bills are getting paid. And especially if you're a single mom, of course, you're carrying the mental load for your household. But I think just by nature of being nurturers and wanting to take care of everybody around us, like we make sure the appointments are scheduled and we make sure that the groceries are bought and that we know what's going on for dinner and all of those things. And it's just a role that we kind of find ourselves in, or we step into, or we even gladly say, that's what I wanted for my life, is to be able to take care of people that I love. But then we look up and we haven't taken care of ourselves, and we haven't designed our life in a way that allows us to be our best selves. So help us think about how to do this in a purposeful way. What are some questions that listeners can ask themselves to start thinking about what their ideal life looks like?
Okay. I'm going to give you an instant when my kids, so I have 3 sons, they're exactly 2 years apart, and they were very, very athletic. So sports was just such a huge part of our life. And I remember we were just playing every sport for a while. And it was baseball season. And so I had 3 boys on 3 different baseball teams.
Oh boy.
And so it was every single night of the week, someone had practice. Then there were the games. And I remember making this decision. Oh my gosh. And you talk about a riot in my house when I made this decision. I said, okay, now this was way when they were young. This was before high school. I said, you can choose 2 sports a year. You're going to play 2 sports a year. We're not just going to go from one sport to the next sport to the next sport to the, because Andrea, it was a crazy life. Yeah. We never sat down and had a meal together. We were running. I mean, we had this big round chair. I bet I had that thing for 10 years. And that was where the laundry went. I never folded laundry. I washed, I dried, and it went into the chair. And when we as a family needed clothes, we went and dug things out of the chair. And that's how we lived for several years of our life. And then we were going to bed at 9:00 at night. Then we were getting up in the morning and they were trying to do homework that they should have done the night before. And we were rushing. And I remember thinking, this is not a life that I want to live. I wanted my kids to play sports. They were great at sports. And when I made the announcement, I am telling you what, they were furious with me. They were like, no way, because that was their love. Yeah. And I just stuck with it. And I mean, I doubted myself a lot, and but I just said, no, we're going to sit down and eat. We're going to have dinners together. We're going to go to bed at a certain time. We're going to do these things, 2 sports a year. Do you know, after that first year, it was never even a conversation. They just knew, we have to choose. And so they chose football and track. Then later they played golf. But that was a decision that I made for my family that I'm so glad I made. So those are the kinds of things you have to look at. If you don't like what time you're going to bed and what it's all like in your home, then you have to stop and say, okay, what do I need to do different? Listen, it's hard to change the rules midway. You've done things a certain way for so long, and then all of a sudden you lay down the law. Well, you're the meanie and but you know what? God didn't put me on this earth to be their friend. He put me on this earth to be their mom. And that means I had to make some, hard decisions. I didn't always make the best decisions, but I believe that was a good decision. So I think that we can literally, as a woman, when you get finished listening to this podcast, just sit down and make a list of what you love about your life and what is it that you don't love. And then how can you begin to scratch those things off that you don't love? What changes do you need to make in your family? What time you go to bed? What you do in the mornings? The kind of food you eat? Are you taking care of your body? Do you attend church? Do you have, whatever is important? Then look at what do you love? Do you have a hobby? What's giving you life? What's feeding your soul? What's good for your kids? And then add more of that to your life and get rid of some of that, as well as a long-term plan.
Yes.
That's all immediate, but what is the long-term plan? And when I say long-term, it could be a year or 5 years or 10 years. Some of us can't move to the city that we want because we have some responsibilities that we would have to take care of. Some of us could make the move tomorrow.
Yes.
Some of us could work towards that move in a year. So it's really just taking the time to look at what your life looks like, getting rid of some of those things and adding more of what you love and getting rid of what you don't love.
I love that. I think sometimes also as women, nobody's coming along to ask you these questions. By the way, you got to ask yourself these questions, and you can't just wait for people around you to say, well, Tresa, tell me what you really want your ideal life to look like, and then I'm going to help you make it look like that. Unless you've hired a darn good life coach, there's nobody coming along to ask you this question, and so it's on you. You got to ask yourself these questions, and what I'll find is, when I ask someone what their goals are or what you really want your life to look like, they're like, well, I've never thought about it. Nobody's ever asked me that. And so sometimes I'll encourage women to just start journaling about it for a little bit. Like you said, just write a list of what are the things that you want. And I think one that's really helpful, and I learned this from a book by Marie Forleo called Everything is Figure Outable. She says to start with the journal prompt, wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be cool if, and just see what comes to your mind and think about your day-to-day life. Like, wouldn't it be cool if I started my day like this? And then just see what comes up when you're allowed to just dream about what does your perfect ideal day look like, and why can't you make your day look like that starting now? And if not now, can you work towards it?
Yes. When you begin to think about something, then you typically begin to talk about something. And when you begin to think about something and talk about something, you automatically, sometimes even subconsciously, start working towards that thing.
Right.
And so you make these things happen. And so many times, like you just said, wouldn't it be great if, and then before you know it, you're doing that thing. Right. Or because you're rearranging your life and you're trying to figure it out. Where there's a wheel, there is a way for anything that we want. There is a way to get it. It's not always overnight, but there's a way. And if we will start thinking about it, talking about it, surrounding ourselves with other people, telling them about it, and then especially if we've got the right people, they're going to help us. They're going to encourage us, inspire us to reach and do some of these things.
Yes, absolutely. So, when life gets busy, most of us get stressed and we try to jam pack more action items into our day, and we let things like self-care fall off the list. So how do you recommend people prioritize this? Well,
first of all, let me just be the first to admit that I fall into the same thing. And I love adventure and I love new things. And so I tend to say yes too much. And I really have to reel myself back in. And the worst part is like if you've already said yes and then you have to take it back.
Right.
That is, that makes you a yucky person. However, you can't continue to say yes to something that doesn't work for you, is not, So I think that is a lot of it is, and I think high achievers, ambitious, goal-oriented women have the most problems with this, because even though I'm designing a life that I love, this is what I'll do, Andrea. This is what I catch myself. Oh, I'm living that life I want to live until 11. But girl, after 11 o'clock, I'm like, well, that's not good either. I mean, I still got to have balance in all the other. So I will and this is something I have to do on the regular. It's not a one-time thing. It's ever evolving. I did it just over the holiday, the 4th of July holiday, as I took some time to go because my life is out of control. And I'm like, okay, what do I need to do what do I need to change? What do I need to step away from? Who could do this particular thing for me? And because it's just something that we will always have to do is readjust so that we do not get stuck. So anyway, I think the question was prioritizing. And I think that's it, is I love to journal. And my journal time is think time. That's a meditation. And I always write my journal as I'm talking to God. I will literally say, "Good morning, Lord." That's like at the top, or sometimes whatever I want to call him. Yeah. "Good morning, Father," or friend, or whatever it is, whatever I'm feeling that day. And then I write to him, and I find in my journaling is where I express myself. And so many times it's news to me. You know what I'm like?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the thing. And so I will begin to cry out to him and say, okay, God, help me with this situation. How do I handle this? I need to get this out of my life. And so that is part of me prioritizing myself. That is me thinking through. And Andrea, I'm talking about some of the silliest little things in life.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the big things. Most of the time, it's not the big things that get us. It's the cramming our life filled with little things and people or situations that we need to just close the door on and step away from, or have more time for that. So I think that's it. However, because we're all made different. Journaling for me is a time of meditation and figuring out. That's probably where I have designed my life. Both the woman I want to be and the life that I want has started in my journaling.
I love it. That's really that's a practical tip. So everybody get out your journals and get to work on designing a life that you love. Tresa, we always ask our guests for 3 takeaways. What are the 3 things that you would advise an investor or entrepreneur who wants to design a life that they love?
Oh, gosh. First of all, just begin to get by yourself and think about it. I mean, to go really, really deep and write it out. And, if you're scared to death for somebody to read it, just hide it like your diary when you're 12, Now I could care less who reads it, but I remember at times I was really insecure about that. But really write it out, and every day. And here's the deal. What happens if you will do it every single day? Because some days you just wake up and it's random. You think that there's this thing you want. But if you never write about it again, you never think about it again, it's not really that important to you. But when you see that this same thing you have been saying and talking and praying about, obviously that's pretty important to you. And so taking the time to write it out, really think about, okay, what would I like a day to look like? And then how realistic is that thing? If you have to be at work at 8:30, then starting your day at 11 is not realistic. But what time could you get up, still get a decent night's sleep, and do some of the things that you want to do? How could you get to the gym? What do you need to rearrange? Are your kids involved in too many activities? Do I spend too much time watching TV? Just really, really thinking about it, writing it out over and over and over until you gel with what's really important with you. So that would be one, is taking the time and writing it out. Number 2, thinking about what you could do right now. What can you do today that would make your life more enjoyable, more relaxed? As well as what could I do in 3 months? What could I do next season if I didn't let my kids do this thing? Would it, and I had more time for this, is that equally as good for them? It's not all about us. We have to think about, the whole family unit. But what could I do in the future? If I really want to live in a certain place, how can I start moving towards that? So your long goal, and I am not like a long goal kind of person. I stick with more of, I'm a 3, 6, 9, 1 year person.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so that would be number 2. And then number 3 is, what action steps do you need to take to make it happen? You can write it all out. You can pray about it. You can think about it. But then what action steps, what phone calls do you need? So, some things are as simple as a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And, or an email to somebody to start, whatever, finding that trainer, or, because once I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't even know what hours, let's just say working out. I don't even know what hours would be available for that. If I call a trainer and she tells me what hours that she could do it, now I'm like, okay, well, what would I need to do to make that happen? But I took some action. I did something to get me towards that thing. So take some action. Don't just think about it. Do something about it.
Oh, I love it. This is good stuff. I think you've inspired a lot of listeners today. Well, thank you, Tresa, for sharing your insights. I want to go back and watch that video in your training again, because it always just reminds me of who I want to be, and it helps me think differently. So thanks for sharing that with all of our listeners today. Well, on behalf of Tresa, Todd, and the Women's Real Estate Investors Network, I'm Andrea Engstrom, encouraging you to be brave and dream big.